Zven, you have already won titles in multiple regions. Now you've won titles in multiple roles. What is that like here having done so as a support?
I mean, support is so easy.
As far as I was concerned, this interview meant that Zven was someone who was free to go after and analyse properly as a player relative to other supports and to treat as an actual support. Obviously, I know he's quoting Aframo in this interview, but at the same time, if you're going to come with the confidence of Doublelift, you better not be playing like Doublelift in 2020 Worlds. And let's be honest, he had the same floor as Doublelift at 2020 Worlds. And that's champion pool. And Zven, let's be honest, in 2022, Zven got a bit of a free pass as far as a lot of people are concerned. Yes, he had issues, but he was still pretty decent. He was playing decent games on Lulu, Renata, Yuumi, even the Nautilus came out a couple of times. He looked relatively solid for what his team needed. And whilst he didn't have the deepest champion pool, it was a new role. He just role swapped. So, it was understandable. And, whilst he had a good performance with his team, obviously his team was one of the best teams in NA again. He then went to Wilds and did nothing. They won one game, and that was on the Lulu. His champion pool looked awful. His Nautilus was not up to scratch. His Tom Kench was not up to scratch. His Leona, his Heimer, and his Renata just weren't there relative to other teams. So as we moved into the new season, that was the one thing that was if he can improve his champion pool, he'll be a decent support within NA, and very much within the West as well. And so the hype that goes around with him, because obviously he is a legacy player and he's a top legacy player, it will be a bit more valid if he can just do that one thing. And so when LoL Esports started hyping him up again this year, as they always do for big Western players, I was very interested to see whether he'd actually improved or not, and to see whether he'd changed. And it's interesting. His pool has changed slightly, and I'm not going to say it's for the better. Lulu and Rakan are still amongst his most played, but they're being a lot more less successful. In fact, their win rates are actually below his average win rate this season or year. His Heimerdinger is still right up there. He's actually one of the most prolific Heimerdinger players of any support in the world at the moment. His Rel actually has looked pretty decent, to be fair to him. He's got a 100% win rate. No, that's the Nautilus. He's got 100% win rate on. He's got a decent win rate on it, 80% in 5 games. But it's not set the world alight in terms of actual play. The Nautilus as well and the Milio have been pretty decent. But beyond that, I still wouldn't trust him on the Braum. I wouldn't trust him on the Renata. I wouldn't trust him on Soraka, Fresh, Annie, Yuumi even. I mean, why would you be playing Yuumi anymore? And most notably, he can't play Alistair. He's played one game on Alistair this split. He looked awful. He lost. Got a 1.8 KDA. Was atrocious. And he is just a bit of a liability if you're Cloud9. I know there are interviews from last year about Berserker not wanting to play with any support that's not Zven. But the guy is first blood victim 15.9% of the time. And if you include kills, he's only contributing 5% of the time in favour of his team. So he's a net negative 10% first bloods. It's not very good. And his vision score is low. I mean, I guess that's not that necessarily important. His goal share is actually relatively high for a support as well. But I guess you can say his KP is also nearly 75%, so you can't really hold that against him. But he's still going to be a liability at Worlds. He can't play Alistair, one of the strongest champions in the game right now. I wouldn't trust him on the Rel, the Milio, or the Braum. 4 critical champions. And Lulu and Rakan, his most top 2 played champions, aren't going to make a difference at Worlds because everyone plays against top Lulu and Rakans, and no offense, he's not that good. He's not the best Lulu, he's not the best Rakan. So them being his primary picks aren't going to help him. He's not, I wouldn't even say he's top 5 Lulu and Rakans at the tournament. So yeah, that's champion pool. And then we can get on to decision making, something a bit less tangible, I guess, a bit less obvious. But he still plays like an ADC. And what do I mean by that? In ADC, typically. Obviously, their role is survive, do as much damage in a fight. And Zven still very much plays like that. Zven still finds himself either playing too passive and surviving and hitting rather than using his abilities to set up his team, or he quite often will find himself overcommitting and dying, which is why actually his KDA on almost every support is very low, with the exceptions of Milio and Lulu. His KDAs are fairly low, and so it's going to be difficult for him and his team to work around it. He's not playing some of the key champions right now. I would say arguably the loss against NRG, his champion pool didn't help that, and that was where he played his one Alistair game, by the way, was in the game 4 of that series. So like obviously he has the confidence to put it out, but he does not have the confidence to perform on it. His runes are a little bit dodgy as well. His item building isn't the best. So like there's just a lot of flaws, and people are going to say, oh, you're being really harsh here. And yeah, I am being really harsh. Like, I would still say, I'd like to say top 10 players at top 10 supports at Worlds. But I don't know if that's true. So, I'd say Delight, Carrier Lehens, Kellen, missing on Hung, Crisp. Mickey, I would definitely take all above him right now. Trimby, I'd probably also take above him. Hilly, I'd probably take ahead of him. And Core, I'd probably take ahead of him. So that just leaves him and Ignar of the major regions. And then I would even say like Harp, Chelsea are pretty good. I'd honestly take Harp and Chelsea ahead of him in the right team. Because whilst they don't have like the best record necessarily, they're not necessarily as good mechanically as Zven. Like Zven is one of the best mechanical supports in the game, just inherently by being a former ADC. He is not... He just doesn't have the pool that I would want to see for a player, and that's going to really let his sight down, and his awareness at times is just not good enough. But let me know what you think. I mean, I know I'm going to get some flack for this because I've been overly harsh and I haven't like shown any examples, but this is just trying to get back into the swing of things. There'll be a new video up tomorrow, and we'll try and do a good lead into Worlds, because Worlds is coming up and I haven't released enough content because I've been constantly working on like team intros, and I've just stalled on that as soon as I got to uni. So we'll see. See you in the next one.